One of the things that comes to mind is, what if you, I don't know, like with the urine sample? What if somebody submitted their sample on behalf of you? We are here, Matt Does Fitness, and I guess we can just jump right into it. We finally have these drug test results here, and if you guys saw early, I don't remember when it was, like October last year or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, a long time ago.
So basically, I had this big elaborate list of, if Matt wanted to get bulletproof drug tested, what would that involve? And it was just like a battery of different things. You would have a big elaborate urine analysis that would test for the entire banned substance list. So if you've seen the classic WADA prohibited list, it's updated every year, has a big array of different compounds in different subsections: anabolic steroids, SARMs, peptide, hormones, growth factors, hormone and metabolic modulators, a bunch of different stuff. And then above and beyond that, there's more elaborate testing, which I've kind of described on my channel, how you would sort of increase the scrutiny of the testing to go above and beyond even what, you know, Olympic athletes are tested with. So there's a steroidal module where people will test for your aberrations in metabolites in your urine, which is also done. And then you also have the, you know, detection for synthetic compounds on the prohibited list. But then above and beyond that, if you were to get your blood work done concurrently, you could also assess things that show if you're shut down. Like, there are a lot of different ways to kind of pinpoint weird looking, odd aberrations in blood work, biomarkers, and kind of extrapolate out if somebody is doing something to get around the system. And with Matt, he wanted to do like the most stringent of testing possible, not just, you know, your rinky dink, get a little banned substance panel done from like your local lab or something. Like literally the full fucking like Olympic style testing plus more. So this is the first time I've ever actually been able to subject somebody to like the full WADA. Well, I guess Lex Little did the full WADA bad substance list plus a blood test too. So he is sort of in a similar boat, but I've never had somebody who's actually committed to a long window of random testing too. So Matt is putting up quite a lot of money. Like, this is very cost prohibitive stuff to do multiple sets of this exact same like full battery of tests for months on end. The testing goes way above the Call of Duty for an Olympic level athlete even, essentially, but then also checking your strength. Like, it's not like a drug tester is going to an Olympic athlete and being like, show me your bench, like for, you know, like that sort of thing doesn't happen. So this is kind of like the most stringent we could possibly do. And I definitely commend Matt for putting up the money to do this and the amount of time coordinating it, because in the UK, it's not easy. So if you wanted to like kind of go into like how we got to this point, like we talked about it back in like October or whatever, but we're finally like starting the testing window now. And yeah, if you just want to kind of go into that whole process sort of thing.
Yeah. So I was going to say, that's like one of the, it's a few reoccurring comments that people will make. You'll probably see them in the comments of this video, right? People will say, oh, you know, why is it taking this long? Oh, it looks super sketchy, it's taken this long. It's taken this long because it's been an absolute ball ache to orchestrate. I think you said that being in the UK definitely has played a part, because is the estradiol, one of the things you said was important we get tested. UK labs don't do it. So like, I had to find a lab that, it's called the Men's Health Clinic, I believe. They've been sending my sample to another lab in Spain that is then testing for that thing. So trying to find a lab that could facilitate that. And obviously they've got to be able to do it on a quick turnaround, because whereas normally you'd go into the lab on a Monday morning and that's when the run gets taken and sent to Spain, right? But it's got to be random, so we can't do that. So they had to be able to do a mega quick turnaround. So Andrew does the testing, it takes my blood, he sends it, they get it, it goes on straight to Spain. They get it in time so that the sample's not, you know, trash, and they can actually do it. So that was a ball ache. And then just generally, like, I challenge anyone to try and get like their testing done in a friggin' WADA lab in the UK. Yeah. Good luck doing that, and then let me know how long it takes. Like, they don't do it. They literally don't do private testing. Like, trying to get this, again, took a very, very long time. That's why, so I'm now a member of the WMBF, because I had to join that federation to even get access to that testing. And even then, it wasn't simple. So yeah, it took this long because it friggin' took this long. And again, if anyone wants to go and try and make it happen quicker, I'd be interested to see that.
No, yeah. So obviously, for me, even like there would be immediate skepticism around somebody paying for their own tests to have done, and like how legitimate it is. But like I've talked with the head of the WNBF separately. He has endorsed not only the process of collection, the randomization, everything that's going into it. So it's kind of like this organization is sort of like staking itself on this being legitimate. So it's not just Matt putting up money and going to get tests done whenever he feels like it to make videos. Like it's literally an entire organization that is facilitating it, as if he's not just like a natural bodybuilder in their organization who's competing or something, but also like doing tests. Like I guarantee none of the athletes in that organization are like this scrupulously tested too. Like this is stuff above and beyond the Call of Duty, like I said. So
in terms of the, as well, just to emphasize now, so in terms of the testing moving forward, so Andrew, who's coming to test me, and the phlebotomist. So Andrew we're in a shared calendar, right? So he's in my calendar, so he knows my whereabouts. So for example, Andrew he could message me like now and say, I'm coming to test you tomorrow, and then come and test me tomorrow. So that's like a live process. In terms of the length of that, I mean, I guess we play it by ear, but I would like it, like we said there, 6 months. Like it needs to be long enough that, obviously I've ruptured my Achilles, right, which is pretty bad timing, yeah, but I'm not I will do this, right? Once I maintain my physique, maybe even improve my physique, but at least maintain my physique, hit bench press PBs and get my squat and deadlift to at least close. I mean, I'd like to exceed them, but at least close to all-time PB level, and I'm passing tests, which are, like you said, the most friggin' scrutinous tests you're ever going to get, then anyone that debates that is probably a psychopath. Do you know what I mean? So at that point, yeah. I'm not really concerned.
Yeah, so yeah, for me, like for what it's worth, I definitely see this as comprehensive enough. Like this is above and beyond what could possibly even be considered adequate at like Olympic sports level, essentially. So if we want to dig into the test results, I can kind of just elucidate what exactly went on, why, what the results showed. I think it's probably easiest to go over the urine analysis first. Just because it's the first report I received. Oh, and by the way, like one thing I did want to mention too, I almost forgot, is obviously one of the things that comes to mind is what if you, I don't know, like fucked with the urine sample? What if somebody submitted their sample on behalf of you or something like that? Boom, sponsored integration. Hopefully I did not just deafen some headphone users. This is Magic Spoon sponsoring the channel once again with their macro-friendly, protein-dense, sugar-free, inflammation-free, brain fog free cereal of the gods, bro. I would take great measures to go buy this stuff. Actually, I would drive over the border to get my LabCorp blood work done, as well as make a visit to my PO box and pick up some stuff that was at the time not shipping to Canada. One of the most notable being the Magic Spoon cereal, which I used as a makeshift cheat meal of sorts for years until they actually sponsored me, and now I just have this shit on tap, bro. It's fucking awesome. This is my go-to cereal that allows me to stay within my calorie goals for the day, as well as concurrently hit my protein requirements without bogging my brain down with unnecessary brain fog from what you would otherwise get from sugar-dense cereals that have no nutritional value really whatsoever, whilst retaining nearly as good of a flavor profile, if not identical in some cases. Like for example, the Frosted, really fucking good. Peanut butter, exceptional. Honey Nut, a new exotic introduction to the fleet that I have been enjoying lately. And my all-time favorite, of course, cinnamon. And some are really damn close to what you would get as a kid, you know, with the traditional shitty cereals, like their fruity flavor, pretty damn close to Fruit Loops, but you get a hit of 13 grams of complete protein per serving. It's just 4 grams of net carbs per serving and keto friendly, 0 gram sugar, gluten-free, grain-free, uses natural sweeteners like monk fruit, inulin, allulose, as opposed to sugar-dense shit that makes you feel terrible. Oftentimes when I would have a like actual cheat meal and like really slam myself with like Frosted Flakes or some shit, I would end up incapacitated with brain fog. Sit down on my computer trying to work, nothing's getting done. That is productive, to be honest. So for me, this has been my go-to cereal of choice for years at this point. I've talked about it many times on the channel, and I also really like the fact that this is one of the first companies that really like saw potential in my channel and stuck their neck out to sponsor my videos and whatnot. So it's very, very much appreciated when you guys support them, which indirectly supports me. Click the link below to get some Magic Spoon cereal today. You can build your very own variety box. with mixing and matching any of the flavors, as well as, there are other ones I didn't even mention that are very good too. Blueberry, cookies and cream, maple waffle, like there are a bunch of different ones, and they are all super solid, especially given the macronutrient profiles, in my personal opinion. You can click the link below and use the code Derek for $5 off, or go to magicspoon.com/Derek, or click the link in the description to save $5 off your order today. And I would highly encourage you to try the honey nut if you are a regular Magic Spoon customer and you haven't tried it yet. It's really goddamn good, and it is one of the lower calorie options too, at the 140 calorie mark. Some of them skew a bit higher, but in general, this one is, I'd say, hits all the marks as far as like the protein relative to macronutrient content of the calories and whatnot is pretty solid. So you can check it out. Link in description. Back to our regularly scheduled programming. Like, Matt has documented him getting his blood drawn and doing the urine test and whatnot. And then for me personally, I've corroborated the information from the WNBF, and they verify it's actually his sample. Anyways, the first test result was based on the GCMS analysis of urine for different synthetic compounds. So this would be going through the 2022 WADA banned substance list, where you have, your anabolic agents. This includes anabolic steroids, novel ones that you probably never heard of, SARMs, things of this nature, as well as the laundry list of different peptide hormones, growth factors, and whatnot. Like, if you need to know what it includes, like, just type in WADA ban prohibited list, and like, it's every fucking compound under the sun. So anyways, these test results do say, I'm just gonna read it out loud. So we have the WNBF UK test mission event code, blah, 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 out of competition. One sealed blood sample was received by the laboratories at 1:20 p.m. on Tuesday, 29th of March, 2022. The container code was as follows: A10001. Sample coded with prefix A, analyzed according to the International Standard for Laboratories of the World Anti-Doping Code, using ISO IEC 17025 accredited immunological methods for human growth hormone isoforms test. No substance prohibited under the 2022 prohibited list of the World Anti-Doping Code was detected in the sample. But it also had the cost prohibitive HGH isoform differential immunoassay, which is a test that they really only typically do if somebody is suspected to be using growth hormone, if they had like an anonymous tip, or somebody just is like a freakish looking human, essentially. Like, this is not something that is typically done just by default in all tests. In general, this is something, even at the Olympic level, every sample is not going to be tested for HGH. Even if you were on HGH, which fortunately this shows you're not, obviously, but it's not something that's that performance enhancing anyways. It would be something that would definitely help your Achilles, probably, which would be, nice if you could use it.
You said that's a good point just quickly to raise as well. That's another common comment that I get, right, is like, oh, how convenient, you've ruptured your Achilles and now you start the drug testing. Like, you can confirm, Derek, right, if there was ever going to be a good time to take drugs, a post-Achilles rupture will be the time, right?
No, I'd be suggesting some of the shit that you aren't on.
Yeah. Like, I've had to sit on my sofa for like 2 months doing banded calf raises and stuff, right? Trust me, if I could take drugs right now, it would be an absolute dream, because my Achilles would be way further down the line of rehab, but again, not doing it. Okay,
so we had the growth hormone and related factors being checked. We had the isoform differential immunoassay being checked. Also had, like, I could go down the whole battery of, peptide hormones and whatnot, but basically what you need to know is there was no, I'm pretty sure BPC is even banned in WADA prohibited list now. Like, pretty much everything under the sun that you would imagine could be useful right now from a recovery aspect, and then also the anabolics realm, everything's clean. So in this, we have something called a steroid profile chart, which basically shows a bunch of different urinary metabolites of testosterone metabolism, and these ratios are used to kind of identify red flags in your actual excretion pattern. So this would be like your testosterone to epitestosterone ratio, for example, is something that is commonly used in doping analysis to see if somebody has, if they're using testosterone, for example, they would have suppression of epitestosterone, while subsequently their testosterone would be higher because they're literally administering testosterone. So they typically have a cutoff of 4:1. So if your T to epitestosterone ratio is above 4, that would be kind of a red flag to them, like, something is really off here. Maybe we'll look further and kind of see what's going on. Is this guy doping with testosterone? Your ratio is 1.1. So that's like pretty much dialed in with physiologic, straight up, natural, no red flags whatsoever. We will assess that as we go forward too, to see if that changes on each subsequent test that you're randomly subjected to. But for now, like, that baseline is very representative of natural function. But again, and this kind of goes back to the scrutiny of this battery of tests above and beyond like Olympic testing or UFC testing or any of that stuff, is Matt has a T to epi-T ratio and the rest of the steroid profile. And then he also has the blood work showing his testosterone and gonadotropins to show if there's any suppression. So basically the overall result of the entire WADA banned substance list was negative, and there was nothing detected, in addition to having the cost prohibitive and rarely performed isoform differential immunoassays. Moving on to the actual blood work itself. So we have lab hormone results. So the laundry list of biomarkers I gave him included things that would show suppression, hepatotoxicity, signs of androgen abuse, because even if you were to like clear all this stuff out of your system, some of this stuff residually will show like traces of really weird changes in your blood work. So you would typically see things like low sex hormone binding globulin as a result of androgen abuse. You would see things like low LH and FSH levels. You might see AST and ALT elevations from liver stress. Things like that would be quite indicative of, a designer anabolic, would probably be hepatotoxic. If you're trying to get it in and out of your system quick, you'd be using something oral in general. You would see your LH and FSH dropping. Like there were a lot of things in here. And even at the stimulating your balls with HCG level, I literally had a fertility, like a test that's usually used on women only to assess for like pregnancy metrics, is I'm using to assess that he didn't cheat with HCG to like spike his test levels naturally, to make it look like he's natural when he's actually, because you could hypothetically use something like an HCG and stimulate your testosterone to look normal even though you were just doping. But all of these things together sort of paint a clearer picture that that's impossible, because
just like to emphasize that, because again, that's one of the other comments that's like just a lazy comment that people will just chuck in. You see it all the time, is like, oh, these tests are so easy to get around, like, you could easily just like, people are like, oh, my friend Gary in the gym just tell you can easily mask this thing by doing this. Like, it's not happening, right? With this testing.
I implore anybody watching to please try and dissect these, because it's like, I've already looked through them thoroughly myself. Like, that's why I have such a positive demeanor as I go through it, and I sound pretty favorable while I talk about your stuff. It's because I've already reviewed it and analyzed it myself separately. So like, it's easy for me to go through it now and sound like, everything's clean, because I've already looked through it and I couldn't find any holes in it personally. And this is like what I have dictated before we even talked about this stuff, like what I would want to see in like a comprehensive bulletproof testing. Like, you can go watch some of my old videos to see my stance on what are holes in the testing parameters in different leagues.
That's why, like, because I was at the start of this, my initial plan, I said it in the video, I was thinking, I'll go and compete in a natural bodybuilding competition, right, in a natural fed, thinking that'll be great, like, that'll show everyone that I'm natural. But it transpired that in that scenario, at the absolute best case, is the winner will get tested. So the most you're going to get is one test on the day of the competition, and even then it wouldn't be anywhere near this strenuous, right? Like you said, they would just pick and choose some of the bits. So that would have been, in terms of proving I was natural, that would have proven nothing. So that's why I've gone to this ridiculous extent, and that's why it's taken so long. Because if the basis, my thinking was, if I'm going to do it, like, I might as well do it properly, right? Because otherwise it's a waste of time.
No, yeah, like if you did a natural bodybuilding show and you were the winner and got tested randomly, like that would have been something I probably would have made a video on and been like, this is why this is not that useful, or it's easy, like this is how you get around it. But this is the sort of thing, like, I can't even really poke a hole in it without asserting that if you somehow manipulated the actual sample or provided it from somebody else, and that's why I talked to the organization separately.
Friends of Elon Musk, and he's just like hooking up with this mad like underground lab.
Yeah. So anyway, going through the blood work from top to bottom. So we have a full blood count here, which shows oxygen carrying capacity. We have hemoglobin, red blood cells, hematocrit. So In general, guys who are using androgens, you would typically see an increase in some of these values. Guys who've used gear kind of understand the process of erythropoiesis and the creation of new blood cells and how these are going to be elevated in general in guys who are abusing certain drugs. Everything looks fine here, with the exemption of your lymphocytes, but that's just like a health metric that has nothing to do with your...
What does that mean? Is that bad? What?
This could be like metrics of your immune system, essentially. So lymphocytes like being low. To be honest, I would just wait until you get your next test result, because you might have like a transient like suppression of your immune system based on who knows what, dude. So,
so I did that test was fairly soon after my surgery, like my Achilles surgery. Could that be linked possibly?
Yeah. So if you have like a traumatic like surgery, essentially like a event that is stressful on your body, like yeah, you could see aberrations in these numbers for sure. Okay. So I'm not surprised that like something's off if you just had surgery. So anyway, the full blood count looks natural to me. So moving on to the biochemistry, this is assessing total protein globulin estradiol. This is something that is a byproduct of testosterone metabolism. So when you have testosterone, it can either aromatize into estrogen or 5-alpha reduce into dihydrotestosterone, DHT. You have a 77 estradiol in picomoles per liter, which is like dead in the middle of natural looking. Now getting into the liver function, we have hepatotoxicity metrics. Like these are things that would, in general, if you're going to be using a synthetic like designer drug or something that's some orally administered agent that's in and out of your system fast, you might see transient spikes in ALT and AST. Yours are in range. Your liver function looks good. Nothing here is concerning to me from a health standpoint or a doping standpoint.
That's good as well, because like,
yeah,
I have a tendency to eat pizza and stuff, right? And donuts. So it's nice to know that it's not adversely affecting my...
Yeah. No, your lipids don't look too bad either, considering your propensity to eat copious amounts of shit or whatever it is you do in your eating challenges and whatnot. So cholesterol levels good. Like in general, the main thing I'm looking for here is HDL suppression. When you are using androgens, you will typically see this number plummet. And it's something that is in general, even if you were in the reference range, it would be something that's like just over acceptable for guys who are using stuff. And it's not a definitive metric of anything, but it is something I use as like another pinpoint to kind of, own in on if there is something weird going on. And to me, nothing looks weird about this. So I would go over that and say it looks good and continue on to the hormone. So this is the main thing I wanted to get checked. Follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. Basically how your body works is it has a feedback loop where your hypothalamus shoots out a signal called gonadotropin releasing hormone to your pituitary gland. Your pituitary gland is the thing that produces luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. These are two stimulating hormones that go down from your brain to your testes to then stimulate testosterone production, as well as like sperm maturation and whatnot, and the production of sperm. So this is something that if you were using testosterone, if you're using anything anabolic related, in general would be suppressed down to below, like you see this range here, it's like FSH 1.5 to 12.4, LH 1.7 to 8.6. They have these ranges here. Those are representative of physiologic natural production. So if you have a healthy functioning axis, HPTA, hypothalamus, pituitary, testicular axis, where your body is natural, you would have this healthy regulating feedback system whereby your balls tell your brain like, okay, or the receptors in your body that have been adequately saturated or not by testosterone, estrogen, different things in your body, signal to your brain how much of this gonadotropin releasing hormone to produce, which tells your pituitary how much to spit out of this FSH and LH to go down to your testes to produce testosterone as well as sperm. But if you were on exogenous hormones, artificial hormones, anything that is anabolic, androgenic related, you would have a suppression of these because your body already has adequate amounts of hormones from the synthetic shit you're administering or taking orally. So your LH and FSH, we would in general, like in almost all cases, essentially, like it's pretty fucking hard to get around this part, and this is why I am so I don't know, critical of the testing parameters in a lot of sports leagues is they don't look for this. Like, it makes no sense to me why they don't, because this is a actual clear metric that tracks with time if you were using something. Because hypothetically, let's just say you pass the entire urine test. You could be using some random designer steroid that no one knows about, and your FSH and LH would be in the gutter, but they don't look for it. They don't care. They don't care about lack of FSH and LH. They care about if you were synthetically using LH to spike testosterone production in your balls, but they don't care if it's crashed because they don't even look for it. Quick note from another one of our sponsors. This is Seed's Daily Synbiotic DS01 trademark. This is the Daily Synbiotic 2-in-1 pre and probiotic capsule that I use as an insurance policy of sorts. It supports gut health, skin health, intestinal permeability, a bunch of different things that are ultimately related to the relationship between the gut-brain axis and multiple systemic effects that are dictated by your gut microbiome. This is an area that is not very well understood, so it's an area that I always deferred out to other educational platforms who are more at the cutting edge and actually focus on this kind of stuff to get my education about it. This is something I have featured on the channel multiple times, and for good reason. It is the Synbiotic formula that I trust personally, and they are sustainably delivered each month. You get this glass container here for the first month, and it is infinitely refillable with compostable, biodegradable packaging that comes with the refills. But ultimately, the reason why I use this stuff is the insurance policy. You know, I don't know how significant of an impact having the novel formulation is on actual longevity metrics or vitality, but for me, this is another area of optimization that I deem to be useful enough to actually spend my own money on. And this was the formula that seemed to be the most science-based with the most literature to support its efficacy. I know certain individuals, even with things like Crohn's, for example, have trusted this formula for gut support and whatnot. And there are numerous other benefits that may come from it that go above and beyond the standard, you know, is your stool, you know, diarrhea or solid. Like, it has, the gut microbiome is wildly hard to understand and has so many interactions with mood regulation, overall systemic health, actual neurological support, like all this crazy stuff that I am mindful of and try to optimize. So, you know, that's why I'm deferring to it, like I said. So if you want to support me as well as try it out, you can check out the link in the description below to get 15% off your first month supply of Seed's DS01 Daily Synbiotic, and use code Derek at checkout to save 15% if the link is not auto applying it. Thank you to Seed for sponsoring today's episode, and we are going to be getting back to our regularly scheduled programming. So for us, this kind of rules out the idea that you could possibly be using, at least for this snapshot in time right now, synthetic anabolic androgenic steroids, SARMs that haven't been discovered yet of how to test for in your urine, stuff like that. In general, if somebody had this battery of tests, we could at least rule out that they're natural for like a big chunk of time around the testing window, because I would see aberrations from weeks ago even reflected in their blood work probably. But for you, with the 6 months of random testing and your metrics stay above, you know, where they are now or better, and your physique does not change and deteriorate in any capacity, it would be pretty hard to assert that you ever got to where you are because of the drug use. Like what
and again, I think an important thing to add in there is my age. I think maybe some people that aren't familiar with my channel don't realize, like, I'm 36, right? So, like, by the time I'm done with this testing, I'm going to be almost 37, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, spoiler alert, what's going to happen is over the next 6 months, my physique will stay as it is. My physique's been the same for a good, I don't know, 5-6 years now, right? Hasn't changed. My strength metrics will be back to where they were possibly. The goal is to get beyond those, especially with my bench press, but we'll see what happens with the Achilles. But either way, my strength numbers, I'm going to be doing massive squats, massive deadlifts, massive bench presses. I'm going to have the physique I have now. I'm going to be closing in on 37 years of age, and I'll be passing these tests. Now, there is no way anyone, again, that's not an absolute psychopath can argue that I was on drugs. There's no way you can be on drugs, surely, right? Be on drugs, stop taking drugs, get to your late 30s, and then maintain your physique and maintain your numbers. That's unless I'm an alien, that's not possible, right? So
yeah, and a lot of people, like, again, I should iterate too. Like, I have no like horse in this race. Like, to me, I'm just here to interpret the stuff. The fact that Matt's willing to put up the money and do this, and I'm like, he's willing to get randomly tested and do it the way that I think is comprehensive enough, I'm like, great, like I'll interpret it and this is cool. But like, I don't care if the numbers become like they come back and you're unnatural at one point. It's not like I have I'm hoping it goes one way or the other. Like I implore anyone to try and dissect this the way I am now, because that's like this. I do this even on videos for fun. Like I will go look at drug test results and figure out and try and dissect the information. So like this is fun to me, you know? It's not like I care if you end up being natural or not. So
but like it's also, I like to think, yeah, that this will, because I genuinely believe now that in social media, fitness social media in particular, I believe the bar is very, very low now for what people perceive to be possible as a natural athlete. Anyone that has a decent physique and is lean immediately is assumed that they're on drugs right now. Of course, some of those guys are, of course they are, right? But lots of them aren't. And I think once I do this, I think it will change people's perceptions as far as what they think is natural. Because I am by no means, I haven't got the best physique in the world, right? I'm not the strongest guy in the world. I'm sure there are natural guys who are bigger and stronger than me, right? But people don't believe that. Now, once I do this, they're going to say, well, hang on a minute, if Matt's natural and he's always been, then maybe this guy, I think it will at least put, sow like a seed of doubt and hopefully stop people from just automatically jumping to that assumption,
Yeah, because this is like this is the first time anyone's going to have been subjected to the scrutiny as well as the...
I'm like a guinea pig. I'm literally the guinea pig right now, aren't I?
The duration of testing too. So yeah, like I definitely think this will be very enlightening. If you end up being natural for the entire like half-year period of random testing, it would be like quite a, I don't know, beacon of light for the natties for sure, I would say.
Yeah. And it will be funny. It will be very, it's going to be very satisfying. Again, I've said it before, like I'm looking forward to an absolute plethora of apologies. There's going to be lots of them coming in. On the numbers in particular, right? Like I did this hormone thing, like I've done just the hormone part of this, something similar, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and my testosterone it still is now, right, in the normal range, but slightly towards the lower end of the normal range, right? But I was like very surprised at that, because I think everyone, myself included, assumes that if you're in decent shape and or strong, you're going to have good test, right? Or maybe high. I thought it would be high, right? Like the fact that it's the lower end of normal, that's weird, right? Is that weird?
Yeah, so I know like in the past you've had scrutiny on your test results too, because you've shown like years ago even that your total testosterone has never been good by like reference range standards. Typically you would expect the guy who is, your physique, your strength numbers, blah, 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 you probably have like a higher end total T. When we convert your total testosterone results, most people aren't as familiar with nanomoles per liter, which is the unit used in the UK, but we can just easily convert that using a calculator to nanograms per deciliter. This is like the number most people are familiar with. It's typically seen in a reference range of like 250 nanograms per deciliter to 1000 nanograms per deciliter is like the natural quote unquote like range. Like yours is 13 nanomoles per liter, which when you convert that is 374.64 nanograms per deciliter. So like if you saw that normally, you'd be like, huh, like this guy, at just a glance at that number, you might be like, oh, this guy's on TRT. He probably just came off of his TRT for a few weeks and then got his blood tested to then show, look, I'm natural. My test is in the range and it's low end even. It's fucking low. Like, how crazy is that? But that sort of thing that's how we ruled it out with all the other stuff we did here. But yeah, it's kind of interesting and probably going to be also surprising for people, maybe just as much if you end up natural, that you can maintain everything with these numbers, because these numbers aren't the end all be all. And this is why I stress the importance of going by symptoms more than just an arbitrary number on a piece of paper for guys who have low T. Like, do you have morning wood? Do you have vitality? Do you, what's your ability to tolerate, I don't know, like even glucose tolerance? If you eat a carb dense meal, do you get like brain fog after and feel like shit because you can't dump glucose properly? Like these are things that you can assess to determine if you're actually like quote unquote low T is not just dictated. The number helps because it gives you a good guideline, but it doesn't mean by default that if you're at 375 or 400 that you're low. Like if you are healthy functioning and everything is working perfectly, maybe you have a higher density of androgen receptors. You know, maybe you have greater gene expression at the receptor level from the lesser amount of testosterone. Like there's an argument to be made that maybe you just have such a hyper efficient muscle that has such a great density of this shit that you'd produce less test because you don't need as much to achieve the same effect that another guy needs like 800 to achieve. Like we don't really know for sure, but
that's still like, I'm like excited at the prospect of hitting massive lifts, looking like the way I do, and then having those numbers to test as well. Because again, I feel like people would be like, "That's no chance."
No, like I don't
like,
know if you saw the full Lex Little video, but his test, I think he's checked it a couple times now, and both times it was like 500, 600, which is like it's higher than yours by all means. Like yours is going to be like even more of a crazy, you know, enlightening scenario potentially, but like it's not always the guy with the highest test has the best physique or the best numbers.
Yeah.
There are a ton of guys I know with 900 totals who don't look good at all.
Do you think if I did TRT, like if that test number was elevated, is it like a guarantee that I would look better and be stronger?
Yeah. Well, it depends on what your dose is, of course, because you could hypothetically say TRT is the lines are quite blurred these days because some people.
But like if I was doing like a, you know, like an NHS, like a doctor's, you know, just to get it back to what is perceived to be like a healthy amount. Even that amount would still have a big impact, you think?
Yeah, so let's just say you took not enough to get to like 1,000, even though like technically, you know, that might not be the worst thing ever if you wanted to, you know, it's still, you know, natural. But even if you try to get up to like 600, 700 and you just like sustain that, just the act of using exogenous hormones to sustain that level, if you have a shitty sleep, you drink, anything bad happens, you're hyper stressed, that number doesn't change. It stays the same because you're artificially administering it. Whereas for you, when you wake up, you know, your production is at its highest and it'll dip and go up and down all throughout the day. If you do something, you get a really bad sleep for multiple days in a row, that number's gonna crash. If you drink, you do whatever, your diet goes to shit, your micronutrient intake goes out the window because you just wanna eat like junk food instead of good quality food. Like these things are all going to be massively impactful on your number.
This could be the ultimate irony, that if I, through doing a series of tests to prove that I'm natural, I discover I have low test and then start doing TRT. I mean, to be honest, like, obviously, I'm doing these tests and I'm going to show that I've always been natural, right? But if at some point down the line, again, bearing in mind I'm like 36, like if my test is at a point where it's inhibiting my health and it's, you know, there are other side effects, and I would definitely consider doing TRT to get it just to a healthy range, right? Because I feel like I'd be silly not to.
No, the cool thing though is that like you've done test results just on your like basic testosterone stuff in the past, but typically your results have always been, I don't know, had like a giant window between them of like a year or something, because you've done like a few. This is like, you're gonna have a very, very good idea of what your levels are actually at after this is done, because it's like, wow, for the entire 6 months, I've always been under 400, for example. Like you'll have a way better idea where you stand and if that's a viable route to go after.
Again, I'm excited because wait until you see what my bench press and then my squat and deadlift down the line are, and then I'm going to be this amount of testosterone. I'm about to blow people's minds. I'm very excited about that.
No, we'll see. Yeah, that would be wild if this ended up with that outcome. You're just getting.
I'm going to set some world records for this. Enter
the TRT Olympia.
Just blow everyone away.
Yeah.
That'd be sick.
Okay, so there's only a few other blood test metrics that I didn't touch on yet. That was SHBG. This is a binding protein that is kind of like a regulating mechanism for how much testosterone gets transported around to different tissues in the body. This binding protein in guys who are abusing steroids is very rarely above 20, I would say. Having a 42, you're on the high end of the reference range, to me is like very also reinforcing that there's likely not a synthetic like designer fucking, I don't know, Chinese like manufacturer that's making you some synthetic like designer drug that doesn't exist. Like you would typically see things like SHBG being low, we would see your FSH and LH being crashed, we would see things like your HDL being low. Like this looks very natural to me. I don't know much more what I could say about it. Like it is, it's fucking bulletproof, so.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I'm glad that's good to know, because it's an absolute fucking nightmare to orchestrate. So that's good. Yeah, that's satisfying.
Yeah. No, I think like to be honest too, like even as far as leaving some sort of content that is inspiring for naturals. If this works out and everything turns out that you are indeed natural, I know this is a lot of, in your head, you're probably trying to rationalize the cost of this and like, is it really worth it? I think down the line, like if you're actually trying to be not just mindful of like monetization and followers and views and shit, being impactful to your following and inspiring like the natural bodybuilders, like is, I think the ROI on it is definitely worth your money for justifying this process.
Like exactly that. Like there are literally like teenagers who have been led to believe they have to take drugs to get in good shape, right? Which is like obviously a pretty disturbing scenario. So this will go some way at least to showing people that, hang on a minute, I haven't got to take drugs. Maybe I could train for a few years first and see what happens. You know, like it is possible to get in good shape and be strong and be natural. Like, yeah, that will be definitely one of the better outcomes for sure.
Cool. So as far as I know, with the UK organization, they will be subjecting you to this exact battery of tests multiple times randomly over the course of the next, I guess it kind of depends the duration. Like I know 6 months is kind of the ballpark. Like personally, I think if you could even sustain or beat your PRs in like, 3 to 4 months, I think that's still pretty like fucking reinforcing. So I guess it depends like how definitive you want to be at the end of this process.
But the plan for me is just to, like the longer the better. But if it gets to a point where it's blindingly obvious and everyone's kind of bored, then but I want to do it, like I said, the bare minimum is long enough that it's abundantly clear, and also my numbers are at a good level, so it's just completely like watertight, because like I said, what's important, obviously I can show I'm natural now, right? I mean, it's pretty clear I am, because if I was doing this and I wasn't natural, I would again literally be a serial killer. But I want to show that I've, beyond doubt, I've always been natural. So the longer I do this for, the more that becomes again abundantly clear, and the even more apologies I can just wait to receive.
Okay, well, I will be in close communication with the UK WNBF about the subsequent random testing, and then I guess I'll see you in the next video maybe if we end.
That's it. Game on.